This conference will now be recorded.
Hi all, good morning, good evening. Welcome to day one of the exclusive training provided by Isha Training Solutions on JMeter. The name of the training is JMeter Beginner to Master with Groovy, Dynatrace, Kubernetes, Docker, InfluxDB, Grafana, Jenkins, and BlazeMeter. And I am your trainer Chandra, who will be helping you with the understanding of the different topics during this training. So let us begin day one. So before I proceed, any queries from anyone from yesterday's demo session? Any queries from anyone? You can unmute yourself and ask your query if any. Okay, so now let us start the session for today. Let me start sharing my screen. Hope my screen is visible to all of you. So I discussed with you regarding the different types of non-functional testing, and because our focus will be on performance testing as part of this training, so I also told you about why performance testing is basically required, right? Why performance testing is basically required. So then we are going to see some of the common terminologies, okay, some of the common terminologies in performance testing. Okay, there is some issue with this slide. Okay, so the common terminologies like virtually, sorry, could you please be on mute? Yeah. So the common terminologies which we are going to see is like virtual user, right? So when any application is getting used by a real user, right, on any browser or any mobile device, so they are real users. But when we speak of performance testing, we target is lot of users, and they are concurrent users, right? So that is why you cannot have real users, so many real users doing the test to measure the performance of the application. That is why we have the virtual users. Now these virtual users are going to be generated by the different performance testing tools which we are going to use, right? Then comes response time. Now response time is nothing but the time taken by the server. Now basically what happens is, guys, we have a client server architecture, for example, right? This is my client, this is my client, and this is my server, right? Now whenever a user performs any user action, now what is an user action? For example, I am launching any application, I am providing the URL on the browser and hitting the enter button. So at that point of time, I'm going to do that action on my client, that is my browser, for example. So what happens in the backend? A request, right? A request originates from the client and it goes to the server, right? This is my request which goes. Now this request has to be processed by the server. If it is a valid request, the server will successfully process it and it will provide a response back. It will provide a response back. Clear, all of you? Now, this could be a successful response. This could be an erroneous response based on the request, based on the processing by the server. Now, the server will take some time to process that request, right? Whatever request has been sent from the client to the server will take some time to process that request, right? Over here, we will have some time. We will have some time. So, that particular time which is taken by the server to process this request will be called as the response time. Now for each request, okay, for each request there will be a response time. Clear all of you? For each request there will be a response time. So that is what our response time is. Then throughput. Now what is throughput? Throughput is nothing but we can say that it is the efficiency, okay, efficiency of this server. Whichever server you are testing, we can say that the throughput is nothing but the efficiency of the server. Now what is efficiency? Now this is one request from one user, but in production, for example, whenever any application is getting used, there are so many users accessing the application. So concurrently or simultaneously, so many requests are originating from the client machine and going to the server machine. The server has to process all those requests. Clear all of you? Now, if it has to process all those requests, it has to successfully process them. Now, whenever it is processing so many requests, there will be some stress on that system or not, or there will be some pressure on the server. Now the amount at which or the rate at which or the efficiency of the server in processing those requests is known as the throughput. So the amount of requests, the number of requests processed by the server is called as the throughput. Clear all of you? Then we have the request. I told you what is the request, right? Whenever any user action, right? User action will give rise to a request. Okay, will give rise to a request. That request will go to the server. Then the response. This request will be processed by the server, and once it is processed, it will give rise to the response. So that is the response. Response is something which we get back from the server. Request is which goes from the client to the server. Transaction. Remember, all these user actions. Now, for example, I'm trying to launch an application, or I'm trying to log in, or trying to search some product. I'm trying to purchase a product. I'm trying to book a flight. I'm trying to book a hotel. I'm trying to book a ticket, right? Or I'm trying to purchase an insurance. Whatever, you know, business functionality you are trying to achieve. Now, each of the interactions of the user with the server can be called as a transaction. Clear all of you? Each of the interactions of the client with the server can be called as a transaction. So, in order to meet or in order to complete one entire business functionality. Now, what is a business functionality? One functional scenario, one scenario or one user journey whenever the user is navigating on the application in order to complete some of the tasks. Like for example, it is an e-commerce application. So on an e-commerce application, I'm either going to purchase a product or I'm going to cancel an order, right? So these are some of my user journeys. In order to accomplish those user journeys, I'm going to do one transaction. So a group of transactions, right? Group of transactions will lead to my user journey. Then there is the next term is transactions per second. I told you what is transaction. Now this transactions per second can also be called as the throughput. Means how many transactions per second are happening. Okay, if your server is very good, if your server is efficient enough, then you are going to have higher number of transactions per second. Also, it will depend on the number of users accessing the application. Just imagine there is one user accessing the application and booking a flight. Okay, one scenario. Another scenario is 20 users are using the application and booking the flight. Do you think the number of transactions per second which will be completed, or the transactions per hour which will be completed, or the transactions per minute which will be completed is going to be the same? Anyone wants to unmute and answer this? One user is only using, 10 users or 20 users are using. Will there be a difference in the amount of requests processed by the server or not, or the amount of transactions completed by the server or not? Anyone? Are you understanding my point? Because there could be some participants who would not have done performance testing previously, right? Anyone wants to provide an input to this? Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, Chandra, the response time will be differ.
No, I'm not discussing about response time. I'm asking about the number of transactions per second.
Yeah, that will be also different.
That will also be different. When
Different.
one user is using the application and 20 users are using the application, the number of transactions getting processed or the number of transactions getting completed by the server will be different. So the number of transactions per second is going to be higher in which case? The number of transactions per
Number
second is going to be higher in which
number of
case?
users when the application.
Sorry, can you please come again?
So when the application is used by the number, so it
Yes, so I
depends upon
gave
the
you an
number of
example.
users.
Yes, so I gave you an example. One user using the application, 20 users using the application. So the transactions per second will be higher in case of 20 users using the application. Right, all of you? Or anyone is not able to understand? All of you clear? Okay. So any
Sir, can you
queries?
please repeat again? TPS.
Yeah, when one user use okay, TPS is nothing but the number of transactions completed or processed by the server per second at on a second basis. Okay, per second how many transactions are getting completed, that is known as TPS. Now TPS is directly proportional to the number of users. When your number of users are going to increase, your TPS is going to increase. Okay, number of users, so I will write it as number of users, right?
Sir, can you include an example too?
Is that is what I was explaining now. One user is using the application. Okay, 20 users are concurrently using the application. Concurrently means at the same time. So when one user is trying to book a flight, how many flights will be booked? One, right? Suppose every user is trying to do one iteration or one transaction or one booking operation only. So that one user, when it is using the application, it will send one request for launch, for example, then it gets the response, then it will do the login, then it will search for the flight, then it will book the flight, right? But when 20 users are going to do the same operation, for each user there will be request going to the server or not. So the server has to process those requests or not. Now when the server is processing those requests, transactions are happening. Are you getting me? So definitely when one user is using the application, the number of requests which will go to the server will be less as compared to 20 users using the application. Okay, so number of users is directly proportional to TPS. Clear, all of you? Now who can tell me, okay, if this condition fails, if this condition fails means you are seeing that TPS is decreasing with increasing number of users. I told you ideally TPS should be directly proportional to the number of users, or we can also say that TPS is directly proportional to the number of hits per second. Hits per second. Hits are nothing but the number of requests going to the server. Now, when your number of users are going to increase, your hits are also going to increase or not, everyone? Number of users
Yes.
increasing, hits increasing. All of you understand that? So if your hits are increasing, your TPS should also increase. So remember this also, interview question. Okay, TPS is directly proportional or inversely proportional to hits per second. Ideally, your TPS is directly proportional to hits per second. Okay. Now the question which I told you, if you are observing with increase in number of users or with increase in the number of hits per second, your TPS is decreasing. For example, you are observing this. So is that good for you or is that bad for you?
Bad for you.
Sorry?
Yeah, this
Bad for
means like the server is not able to handle that much of load. That's why the TPS is decreasing.
Okay. I will answer it in a different way. I will say that it is good for me. Why, you know? It is bad for the application, but as a performance test engineer, it is good for me because it is my job to find out bottlenecks. It is my job to find out issues. Do you understand the point? Obviously, we are working for the project just in a uh, lighter note, that when we are getting issues, you know it is good for performance testing team because we are highlighting issues, we are finding out bottlenecks, because of which the application is going to become better. Yes, you all are right that when TPS is decreasing with increase in the number of hits per second, it is bad for the application, means its performance is not good. Why? Because the server, as you all rightly mentioned, the server is not able to handle the hits which is coming to it. As a result, the TPS is decreasing. Means still sometime it will increase, but after that you will see either the TPS will not increase or it will decrease with respect to the increase in hits per second. So if you find that observation, you have found out a major issue. Okay. Okay, any queries anyone on the terminologies which I have mentioned in the left hand side?
Yeah, Chandra, one question here, Manikanta here.
Yeah.
Yes, Chandra, you are saying the server not able to handle that much of the load. So what could be the reason why it is not able to handle that much of the load?
There could be multiple reasons. There could be
So could you
multiple
share?
reasons. It could be from a hardware point of view. It could be from a software point of view. Okay, so that is part of your analysis. There can be multiple reasons for that. When you are going to analyze the application logs, when you are going to analyze it with the help of an application monitoring tool, okay, it could be the case that when there are so many users trying to access the application, some of your SQL queries, they are not able to execute, they are taking higher response time, they are utilizing higher resources, or else your infrastructure is not capable to cope up with that load. Because for example, your application was working fine for 500 users, but then you increased it to 750, so your performance was good with 500, but when you increase it to 750, you saw that your TPS is decreasing, right? So there can be multiple reasons for that. That is why you do the analysis, right? Understood? I can means
Yeah,
there cannot be a generic answer for that. Means I just wanted to highlight that there can be different reasons for that which we have to analyze. There cannot be a single generic answer for that. Okay?
yeah, got it, Chandra.
Yeah. So any queries anyone on the terminologies which I have mentioned on the left hand side?
Yeah, just one thing, like if the TPS is more, then we can say the throughput is also more.
Yes. TPS is
Okay.
nothing but throughput. If your TPS is more, your throughput is also more. You will have a question in mind why I have mentioned throughput and transitions per second differently here, right? Maybe that is why you asked that question, because
Mhm.
sometimes some tools consider your number of hits per second as throughput also. Okay, but from a performance testing point of view, your throughput is nothing but a transitions per second. Higher your TPS, higher is the throughput. Okay. Yeah.
Ex-
Then we
Excuse me,
have
sir.
iter. You tell me.
Yeah, what are the server side metrics and client side metrics, sir?
Okay. So server side metrics are the metrics which you are capturing on the server side, like CPU utilization, memory utilization, disk utilization. Then inside CPU utilization again you have processor time, okay, system time. So percentages of the time spent by the processor, then the idle time for CPU utilization. There are so many things. For memory, similarly, pace faults. Okay, for disk, like number of bytes read per second, number of bytes written in per second. So there are network metrics. So there are so many on the server side. On the client side, uh, basically from a browser point of view, okay, from a user experience point of view, time to first byte, largest contentful paint. Okay, there are so many metrics from a client side. Client side metrics means on the client side, this architecture which I showed you, on the client side, whichever metrics you are gathering, they are your client side metrics. The server side metrics means whatever you are capturing on the server side. Understood? Any other queries, anyone? Okay. Then we have iteration and iteration per second. Very, very important, guys. What is an iteration? People get confused with iteration and transaction. Okay. I told you, for example, we are booking a flight. When we are booking a flight, user will launch the application. Then we'll log in into the application. Then we'll search for the flights. Then we'll book the flight. By selecting the desired flight, they will book that flight. So launch is one transaction, login is another transaction, search flight is another transaction, select flight is another transaction, booking a flight is another transaction. But this complete group of transactions is your user journey, right? Business functionality. Now when you are doing that business functionality for one time only, as a real user, you are going to purchase any product. One product you have thought that you are going to purchase. So you are going to do one iteration of your business scenario or your user journey. But in case you are going to buy the same product again and again, I can say that you are conducting multiple iteration. Understood, all of you? So one round of test, not test exactly, one round of execution means basically the entire user journey you are executing once. That is one iteration. When you are doing it in for multiple times, there are multiple iterations. So similarly, how many iterations are getting completed per second? Like transactions per second, similarly we have iterations per second. Then that is not that important, guys. Okay, then you see we have two important terms, think time and pacing. Very, very important, guys. Very, very important. I'll have a question for you now. Okay, let me quickly check if there are any questions in the chat, because I can see the okay, there are some private messages. My screen is on sharing, so I cannot see that now. Okay, so what I was trying to say is two important terms, think time and pacing. Think time, first of all. Now let me ask you all a question. Whenever you all are using any application, okay, you launch the application. So as soon as you are launching the application, are you logging into the application? Then as soon as you are logging into the application, are you doing the next transaction? As soon as you do the next transaction, then are you switching over to the next transaction? Again, after that transaction is, as soon as that is completed, are you doing the next transaction? Anyone? Yes or no?
No, 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 Chandra. There is some time.
Anyone having a answer as yes? Anyone? You can unmute yourself and tell me, does any one of you in this session thinks that yes, I do not waste time. As soon as I launch, I log in. As soon as I log in, I go to the next transaction. Then as soon as I complete that, I go to the next one. Is anyone in this forum who uses an application in that manner? Or all of you think that yes, there is some time gap between the different transactions? All of you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah. So that time gap which you are giving between the transactions, okay, you can go on mute now. That time gap which you are giving in between those transactions, that can be intentional, that can be unintentional, right? All of you, that can be intentional, that can be unintentional. So that time gap which a real user gives, you know, while performing the different transactions, that is known as think time. Clear, all of you? The time gap which you have between the different transactions, remember this, the time gap between different transactions. Remember guys, this is interview question. People ask in the interview, what is the difference between think time and pacing? You have to clearly make them understand. All of you understood? When I do a launch, I have some time gap like 2 to 3 seconds. Then I do login. After I log in, I think, what should I do next? Right? Because we think and we do the navigation, that is why this terminology is called as think time in performance testing. But as soon as I, you know as soon as I am done with the transactions, right, I can log off or whatever I want to do. But that is in a real user case. That is in a real user. Now I told you a real user will use the application and do the user journey maybe once. Maybe they will do only one iteration. But in performance testing, what we do? We continuously, put this server under load, right? We send the requests continuously for a particular duration. That duration, can differ from test to test. We have different types of tests. I'll come to that. Now, one iteration like booking a flight will hardly take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maximum 5 minutes. But for example, I'm doing a test for 2 hours. Okay, I'm doing a performance test for 2 hours. So if my one transaction gets or one iteration gets completed in 2 to 3 minutes, what am I going to do for the rest of the time? Right? So what we do exactly in performance testing? In performance testing, what do? We run our iterations in cycles, right? In cycles. One iteration completed, the next iteration, the next iteration, next iteration. It goes on till your test duration. It goes on till your test duration. This is your number of users, guys. Users. Each virtual user keeps on doing the transactions. Now, group of transactions will complete one iteration. So, multiple iteration for your test duration. This is your time, right? So, remember, when we want to give any time gap between each iteration, okay, when we are giving any time gap between each iteration, that is known as pacing. So the time gap or the elapsed time or the delay, okay, the delay between two different transactions is called think time. The delay between two different iterations is called as pacing. Are all of you clear on this?
Can you repeat
And
one more time, Chandra?
the time gap between two transactions, let's say I do the launch, then I do the login. Whatever time gap I give in between this launch and login, that will be called as think time. But let's say I do one complete journey of booking the flight. I want to start it once again. But before I start, I want to give some time gap and then again I will start. So the time gap between two iterations is called your pacing. That is why in the demo session yesterday, there were questions regarding workload modeling, right? Workload modeling. As part of workload modeling, we try to find out what should be our think time, what should be our pacing when we design our tests, because they are very, very critical. Always remember one thing, guys, very, very fundamental thing. In performance testing, you always try to simulate production behavior. Here, all of you, in performance testing, we always try to simulate production behavior, real user behavior. We simulate that. So, if a real user is giving think time, so should not we include think time in our scripts? We should definitely include. Clear, all of you? Now that brings me to another question for all of you. Please listen to this carefully. In functional testing, we do the testing of positive scenarios, we do the testing of negative scenarios. You all might have heard, right? But, or can any one of you tell me, in performance testing, do we focus on positive scenarios as well as negative scenarios? Or we focus on only negative scenarios? Or we focus on only positive scenarios? Anyone? The question is open to
Ne-
you all. Yeah.
Negative scenarios.
Okay. The
It's
answer you are saying is we focus on negative scenarios. Okay.
we focus on
Next.
positive scenarios.
Only positive scenarios or positive and negative both?
So the thing is, like, as a performance testing engineer, you assume that, like, once all the functional defects are, fixed, then your focus is on, like, creating a scenario, and a positive scenario where the users are, let's say, 1,000 users are trying to log in into the shopping cart, into the application, and order something. So you don't want, I mean, if they are failing, or if there is any kind of a negative
I
scenario
understood.
happening.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understood that you were trying to say that as part of functional testing, we try to find out the functional bugs, and then that is an entry criteria for performance testing,
Yeah.
right? But there is a reason for that again. Okay, there is a
Sir,
reason for that. That is what I'm trying to
Okay.
find out from you guys. I have already given you the answer, guys. So anyone else? But yes, thank you for that. You are right. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Do we
Uh,
test only positive or only negative or positive and negative?
Chandra,
sir, positive.
Yeah, tell me. One by one,
Chandra
guys.
answered this right. What I think that in the performance testing, both the scenarios has to be handled, positive as well as negative, expected condition as well as unexpected condition has to be handled.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sir, by assuming negative scenarios, we can improve the performance of the application or web
Okay. Anyone
application.
else?
I will say that on both of the like positive and negative scenarios,
Okay.
we need to focus.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Anyone?
Chandra, we don't think on positive or negative scenarios. Whatever is there in the application, we just have to do the load test or endurance, like whether the application is working fine in current scenarios, whatever are already there in the application.
Yeah. So the functional testing. So okay. First of all, when I say positive and negative scenario, do you understand what I'm trying to convey? So when the functional testing team tests an application, they also have the scenarios in the application, right? Whatever
Yeah,
scenarios are there in the application, that only they test. Understood my point?
yeah, yeah, understood. But we don't
Yeah.
consider the scenarios as negative or positive, right? That's part
Yeah,
of
no. Scenarios are negative and positive. Sorry, I would like to differ with you on this. There are scenarios, negative scenarios and positive scenarios. That is the basis of testing. Yeah, anyone else? I agree there are scenarios in the application, but we have to do the positive testing for that. We have to do the negative testing for that as part of functional testing. Okay. Performance testing, I'll come to the answer. Anyone, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I
Chandra,
will say
is
that I
that
will
real-time
focus
user
on the
scenarios we
business
should test?
scenarios.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm saying that apart from like negative or the positive scenarios, we need to focus on the business scenarios that will be our KPIs.
Yeah,
Like what?
business scenario. Yes, we are going to focus on business scenarios only. But the business scenario,
Hmm.
see, guys, you are not understanding. When a functional testing team tests the application, they also test the business scenarios only, right? Or they test something else.
Yeah, that is just on the functionality part. What will be the expected output will be all that one.
So when you say
As a
business
performance.
scenario, when you say
Hmm.
business scenario, is business scenario not on functionality? Don't take me otherwise, guys. I'm trying to clear your fundamentals.
Right.
Okay.
So
When
what
you are
I
saying
yeah
business scenario, is that not a functional scenario?
that are that is I'm coming that in that business scenarios we need to see what all the KPIs are. What will be the important scenarios on which if any user is getting a slow response, for example, you said that booking of the flight, when we hit on the book flight, it is taking a lot of time. That will be my like the scenario which part need to be the part of the performance system.
Yes, I agree. I agree on that. Okay, fine. You're right. So let me answer this question. First of all, let me explain what is positive and what is negative scenario, guys. Okay, because I think there is a lot, a bit of doubt in your minds when I am testing any scenario functionally. For example, booking a flight. Okay, what will I do? I will give my source airport. I'll give my destination airport. I'll choose a date and then I'll select a flight. Right now, if I am choosing a past date for my journey, is that a positive scenario or is that a negative scenario? I'm testing a functional scenario only, right? To book a flight. But as a
Negative.
tester, I am giving the date as a past date while booking a flight.
That's
It's a
Did
right.
you all
negative
understand?
scenarios.
It is a negative scenario. All of you
That is,
agree?
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Yes.
that is negative.
Yes. So all of you understand now what is negative. Now coming to performance testing, I told you all one very important point. Our objective in performance testing is to simulate real user behavior in production. Okay. Now in production, have you heard of any user going and doing negative usage of the application, guys? There could be some crazy users. I'll take them out of the sample. However, most of the users who are going to use any application, what are they going to do? They are going to use the application in a positive way or a negative way. Do you
Positive.
think any real user, do you think, means you all are also users, right? You all are also using different applications. Do you all do or use the application, or you try to find out defects in the application anytime in production? Whichever application you are using on your system or on your mobile device, you all are using the production instance, right? May it be Facebook, may it be um, you know uh, any e-commerce application, may it be any flight booking application, anything, any application which you are using the production version of it. Any one of you trying to break the application at any point of time? No, right? Or do you do, anyone? That is the basis, guys. In production, a real user never does any negative scenario, because if a negative scenario is passing, right, means it is a defect. And if there is a defect in production, that is a major issue, guys, remember, right? That is why we have these projects running, right? During the project phase itself, our objective is to find out the defects. Clear, all of you? So please remember, in our performance testing, we always do positive scenarios. Okay, we do the performance testing of positive scenarios only. It is otherwise known as happy path scenario. Remember this term, happy path. Okay, clear, all of you? Any queries, anyone on this? So fundamental point is, we always try to simulate production behavior, real user behavior. Any other thoughts? See, this is a open discussion forum. Okay, whatever I say, that might not be true, right? So you all have every, right to have a healthy discussion. If you differ on any of the points, please do let me know. Okay, or any one of you thinks that we should test negative scenarios also as part of performance testing? We should not, because for negative scenarios there is already a dedicated testing, methodology in place, that is functional testing. Their job is to do negative scenario testing and find out if there are any defects. Now, as someone rightly mentioned, for us the entry criteria is the application should be functionally stable. There should not be any functional issues. Okay, that is why our objective as part of performance testing is to only test positive scenarios. Now, during testing of positive scenarios, if we find out any performance issues, like someone was highlighting, when we are trying to book a flight, it takes longer time to respond. Yes, that is good, fine. But while trying to book that flight, I was not giving any invalid values for my source airport or destination airport or any date value, all those things. Understood, guys? Or similarly, let's say my application is working with 500 users, but it is not working with 700 users. In that case also, from a functionality, see, when I'm saying positive scenario, negative scenario, I'm saying from a functionality point of view. So from a functionality point of view, we never consider negative scenarios. That is why, guys, the test data for performance testing is very, very critical. Okay, test data part. Next, network latency. Now, when there is a communication between the client and the server, the data, the request, the response, all these are data, right? So the request, the response, which gets transferred, that happens over a network. So if your network bandwidth is good, if your network speed is good, your response time will be high or less. Anyone, guys?
I
Less. Less.
Response time will be high or less.
no,
I got I
it
got
will be
two answers.
less. It will be
It
less.
will be less. Response time means the time taken by the server to process, right? So if my network speed is also good, my requests will reach faster, server responds to that, the response reaches to me faster. Clear, all of you? Then non-functional requirements, like someone was saying, we have to test the KPIs, right? So in performance testing, or in non-functional testing rather, we discussed yesterday different types of non-functional testing, right? We get the requirements for non-functional testing, what we have to test or what we have to verify as part of non-functional testing. We get those, like each of my application page should load within 5 seconds. My application should achieve a TPS of 200 with 50 users. Okay, my application should be resilient. My application should follow the different security standards. These all are examples of non-functional requirements like the browser compatibility, okay, app accessibility, okay. So what you have to test, that is given as part of non-functional requirement. Then test script and scenario. Okay, so here there is, what is a test script? I told you, as performance test engineers, we develop test scripts. Okay, one moment, guys. Okay, so as performance test engineers, we develop test scripts, right? Now, what is a scenario? Scenario means the profile based on which we do the execution. So sometimes, this becomes a bit confusing. Scenario means sometimes people think that user journeys or business scenarios, okay. But when we say that as a test scenario in performance test, so basically how we are going to use or how we are going to test means what is our profile, workload profile, how many users, what is my ramp up, what is my steady state, what is my ramp down. Okay, so basically this test scenario is otherwise test execution scenario, which we are going to discuss during our test execution. Load generator, I told you we are going to do the test with virtual users like 5,000, 10,000 users, right? So how those users will be generated? Those users will be generated on the load generator machines with the help of the performance testing tool. So the load generator is nothing but the machines from where we are going to generate the load, from where we are going to inject the load. With this, these are some of the common terminologies. Apart from this, there are other terminologies, but the common terminologies which we use in performance testing, I have discussed those. Any queries, anyone? Then we go to the next slide. That is the different test phases in performance testing, guys. Okay, the different test phases in performance testing are requirement gathering, test plan and design, test execution, test results analysis, and test reporting. Okay, so the first phase, that is the requirement gathering phase. Okay, that is the requirement gathering phase. So in requirement gathering, we have different activities. Okay, in requirement gathering, we have different activities to conduct. So whenever you are going to do the performance testing, guys, give me a moment. I'll just quickly check if there are any messages in the chat, any queries in the chat. Okay, I'll stop the sharing for a moment to just check if there are any messages, and then I'll come back to it. Okay, I think I've already explained. So there was a question for transitions per second and throughput. So I have already explained that, guys. Any queries? I can move ahead, right? Okay. So let me share my screen again. Hope my screen is visible. So there are different activities which we conduct as part of requirement gathering. Okay. So be it waterfall model, be it agile model. Okay. These all phases are going to remain basic, guys. These all phases are going to remain basic. How you implement them, yes, there will be a difference, but you are going to conduct these activities in a performance testing project. First is your application understanding. The application which you are going to do the performance test for, you need to understand that application, but you do not need to understand each and every scenario, guys. Okay, on an high level, you need to understand the application, the domain behind it, how it works, what are the different business scenarios. You do not have to deep dive into, you know, what will happen if I give this value, what will happen if I give that value. No, those all things are not our job. Our job is to understand the user journey, how a real user is going to do the different steps, or is going to do the different navigations in that application. Now you can take the help of the functional testing team, or you can take the help of the development team, okay, or your business analyst to understand your application. Then once you understand, you need to identify your scope. That is very very important, guys. Means what is going to be in the scope of performance testing. Okay, what is going to be in the scope of performance testing. Now when I say scope is a very vast one, guys. Means which all scenarios in that application is going to be in your scope. Okay, which all scenarios means which all business user journeys are going to be in your scope, which all non-functional requirements are going to be there in your scope, right? Which all non-functional requirements are going to be there in your scope. Based on those non-functional requirements, what are the different types of tests which you need to conduct in that application? Those all things you have to identify. Okay, you have to identify your scope. Next, the performance test candidates in your application. Now you have understood your application. You want to know which all user journeys. Now any application can have so many functionalities, right? Any application can have so many functionalities. So our job is, how do I identify which all, scenarios are going to be my performance test candidates. This is an interview question, guys. How do you determine which all user journeys will be in scope of performance testing? Remember, your answer should be the frequently used scenarios and the mission critical scenarios. Frequently used means those scenarios which are going to be used by more number of users in production. Those scenarios which are going to be used by more number of users. Now tell me, guys, in an e-commerce application, which is the most frequently used scenario? Anyone?
Add to cart.
Add to cart. Okay, good. Anyone
Buying the
else?
product.
I will say
Payment.
browsing, like searching of the items.
Searching of the product.
Yeah.
Perfect. Search product is the most frequently used, guys. Right? Now, if someone comes and tells you, search product, no one is buying anything, why should I do the performance test? You should tell him that, guys, out
Adding
of your
adding
100,
diversified products.
yeah. So you need to tell that out of your 100% of users, 80% people are going to do that only. There will be so many, select queries going into your database, right? So frequently used. Now next one is mission critical. I'll take the same example, guys. Search product, fine, frequently used, I include that. Now from an e-commerce application, now do you think when users keep on searching the products, it is going to benefit the, customer, or means basically the company? No, right? They have designed the application for users to purchase. If people just keep on visiting and searching for the products, that is not going to book profits for them. Now just think, your search product is working completely fine, okay, but users are not able to purchase, or when they are trying to make a payment, the payment is getting failed, or the payment scenario you are not including, for example, the purchase scenario you are not including. that is also not valid, right? Because that is a mission critical. For that application, what is the mission? The mission is that maximum number of purchases should happen. The application should be able to support that during the sale, right? So those scenarios, those user journeys which are frequently used, and also those user journeys which are going to be mission critical, okay, they need to be performance test candidates. Clear, all of you? Finalized and approved NFRs. So which all non-functional requirements are going to be in your scope, that should be finalized, that should be approved. Once you get the NFRs, you should analyze those NFRs. Okay, you should analyze those NFRs. If any information is missing, you should get those resolved with the business analyst. That is also otherwise known as static testing of NFRs or analysis of NFRs. Okay, whoever has done ISTQB certification, they should be aware of static testing. Static testing is one type of testing, guys. Okay, it is applicable to functional testing, it is applicable to non-functional testing also. You also need to place a request for your performance test environment. Okay, you need to place a request for your performance test environment, and your special request should include that your performance test environment should be close to production. Very, very important. The performance test environment should be close to production. So with this, we will stop the session for today. We have seen, okay, I'll cover the challenges maybe. Okay. Now, every activity, right? Every activity is not always smooth, right? Every activity is not always smooth. Every phase, every activity will have its own challenges. Similarly, in requirement gathering also, we have some challenges. Okay, we have some challenges. Now, what are those challenges? Challenges are finalized scope and NFRs, guys. I told you that we need to identify our scope, we need to identify our non-functional requirements, and we need to finalize them, get them approved. But that is a challenge again. Okay, most of the times we do not get our finalized scope, we do not get our finalized NFRs. Then the test environment availability. So I told you that we need an environment which is close to production, right? But sometimes the project guys say that no, they will not be able to provision a performance test environment which is close to production, but you need to clearly tell them that it is a requirement from performance testing point of view. Otherwise, there is a risk that whatever results you are going to get in your performance testing, that will not correlate to production. Okay. With this, we'll stop the session for today. We'll resume in the next one. Thank you all. Any queries, anyone? Any queries, anyone? Thank you. Have a good one. Bye for now.